Hi, Myra.
How are you?
Oh, hi.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Got your name right.
Yakety yak of our ancient history.
Right.
The two of you together.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking of all the posters that you made. Yeah, right. I don't know. Well, remember that? It was on the truck.
I guess I think back to that time, whatever. Okay. So it was
I'm Rod Howe. I'm the Executive Director of the History Center. So thank you so much for being here today. We knew we would get a good turnout, and we did. By the way, this is being taped by Channel 13. So Lauren Stefanelli is over here. So we just want you to be aware that it's being taped. Sorry. I happen to be a board member for Historic Ithaca, so it helps to bridge and for us to do some joint programming. So we value your support. You support both organizations in multiple ways. Keep supporting those two fine organizations. Introduce John Lewis. John Lewis is the new Executive Director of Historic Ithaca. John has a PhD from University of Kentucky in American History, an MA from the University of Delaware, History with a graduate certificate in Museum Studies, and a BA from Rhodes College in History. But John would be the first to say that those credentials aren't what's important to him. He brings a lot of passion and experience to the organization, and we're very pleased to have John as the new Executive Director of Historic Ithaca. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Lewis. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Rod. I must say that it's with great joy and such a privilege that my first sort of public event is this wonderful panel of heroes of the Clinton House and other preservation activities.
As well as many other buildings that our organization has become involved with. I was going with Tanya Wawritsky over that list, and the Baptist Church on DeWitt Park wanted to tear down or move from its building. And we had a long discussion with David Evans, who was the minister of the church at that time. We finally convinced him, or suggested or something, so they've taken out the formal tiered pews and have leveled that floor, and it's now the most beautiful space in town. It's just gorgeous. The Danby Town Hall, the Danby people wanted to tear down the Danby Town Hall.
Okay, I just want everybody to know, the folks that were in the attic shoveling pigeon poop got $2.50 an hour now. And I think we had a greater risk. I came to be involved basically through the City Hall. I was in just beginning high school, and I just couldn't believe how such a beautiful building could be torn down for a parking garage. I just couldn't fathom it. And volunteering, and that was sort of the first win. Really getting to that point where the people that were passionate about what the city looked like, what the future of the city could look like, one, respecting what has gone before and looking at possible different uses for, what people look at as outdated architecture. As I said in my bio, I respect for historic preservation.
There was a firebug working in Ithaca. He set fires, if you remember, he set fires at some of the churches. I was so worried about fire at the Clinton House that every night I went down and I walked through the whole building to make sure, at least at that hour, there was nothing on fire.
We moved in actually helped with just the point that you raised, because there are people there now and watching the building. But I had the one day that really went wrong. I asked Mary Shelley, and this was not an easy assignment, but nobody ever said no. That was the most amazing thing in this room. No matter how degrading the job or even dangerous, we did it. And people that were asked, they were silly enough to do it sometimes. Anyway, I asked her to remove some of the heavy pipes that were protruding from the ceiling, and things were tricky because there's open framing that she had to walk on. She got some of the pipes were very heavy, some were cast iron, some were ceramic. She got them all down except for one. And that night we heard a crash. And this one pipe came through, and it would pick the fancy piano at the DeWitt Historical Society and landed right smack in the middle of it. So that was my worst day, because I had to face the DeWitt Historical Society membership the next day and had to explain how it was possibly going to happen.
Pickup truck. And we would load it and take it to the dump in West Danby when we were clearing out the stuff. And he didn't always look at the road while he drove. He tend to talk to who was ever sitting next to him or turning around to make sure the load was still on this truck. And I just remember, never been so happy to get to a dump in my life. It was a little spooky, but remember Gordy? Yeah.
Gordy was my neighbor at the barn. They lived in a small shack next to us, our neighbors. And Gordy was in World War II peeling potatoes, and when they told him the war was over, he came up with this. He had this sort of little Navy cap on, which he cut peaks in top of. He wore that his entire life, probably while he was driving to the dump. And he asked him which ocean he was on. That was Gordy.
I think there was far less of that, and much more of an appreciation for hand trades. And I think the Clinton House benefited a lot from that, and Fred would be one example. Another thing that struck me about this project is it's a great example of knowing or not knowing what you don't know. Because if you knew what you didn't know, probably everybody would have quit.
And all the things we came up against, that there was no instructions for how to fix or how to recreate. Intricate moldings that in one of the renovations they decided to take out 5 foot of it and get rid of it. And, just the different ways people came up with reproducing things. There was one gentleman that hand cut and fixed some of the leaded glass windows, figured out how to do these latex castings of the moldings, and then use them as a mold to pour plaster into to finish the moldings. But there were just so many different instances of that kind of thing with this group of people that loved this building so much that, how would we fix it? There was no place to go to, nobody to ask, so people sat around, figured how to recreate what needed to be recreated to make it look nice.
I remember watching the 1972 Olympics in there, and the bartender was a guy named Sonny Day, who was later a mayoral candidate. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And it was also the scene of a fantastic end of the summer party during the project that could probably not even happen today. So that's another example of not knowing what you don't know.
Well, back to bars again. when we bought the Clinton House, it had a big neon sign on one of the pillars. It was, in a vertical thing saying Clinton House Bar and Grill, something like that. The Clinton House had been dark until we purchased it. We started turning on the lights and the bar flies came. Wondered if the bar was open, and I remember dashing around trying to find the switch, so I could turn off the light. Finally, I found it at the top of the basement stairs. But I thought that was so funny with all, we were going to try to save that neon sign, but I guess we gave up.
I think the neon was broken and flittering, and I think we had so many issues we didn't have time to restore that as well. But before we leave the bar scene, since that made our lunches, when we bought the building, I found a secret room in the basement, and of course I had a crowbar, a big one, and I opened it, and it was filled with the worst wine anybody ever tasted in their life. Boone County White and Boone County Red. Well, our luncheons, of course, became memorable because that beverage was served. So we still have a hangover.
Young and stupid.
I would like to say that in the social Ithaca scene, I certainly made more enemies than friends at the time. I certainly had my friends at Clinton House, but ooh boy, Harry Kerr did not love me in the village of Newfield. I wrote a really long, nasty piece. This was a piece that saved Boardman House, and it has 10 major points. And I took it to Armin Adams, who was a lawyer who was in the building, and he read them, and he said, everything you stated here is correct, but please don't go to the media with this. And because, and Jane Marcham, who's here to the help, said to me sort of off the cuff, Vicki, so many letters are coming in for Boardman House, I just can't believe it. It's a blizzard of letters. Well, what maybe you were not aware of is most of them were composed in the basement of the Clinton House.